In the way of introduction, this was made in 2014 with the late great Phillip Seymour Hoffman, my pal. We took it to Sundance. It's based on a Pete Dexter novel. I don't know if anybody know Pete Dexter? Great novelist, wrote Harris Trout. I think that was his big hit. And I adapted the script. It took me a while. I didn't have the rights to it, and I just did it anyway. And eventually, some weird way, I got the rights to the film. And Phil, we were going to make it, and then Phil was too busy. And then I bumped him. We lived in the same neighborhood, and he said, "How'd that movie go?" I said, "I never made it." He said, "You didn't?" I said, "No, I want to make it with you." He goes, "Oh, well, I'm free in June." So we shot it. It takes place in roughly 1978. And it's the book is based on God's Pocket, which is a neighborhood in South Philadelphia in 1978, and by as I said, Pete Dexter. And we can talk about it afterwards. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for coming.
Whoa! What a ride.
It's been a while. I haven't heard that music in a while.
Yeah. So, this genre obviously interests you.
It does.
Yeah. So, what drew you to the story initially? And you talked about discovering the book before you actually had the rights. And
This was Pete Dexter's first novel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I grew up with a bunch of semi-crooked drunks.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the combination of, maybe it's that parochial upbringing of comedy and violence, or,
Mm-hmm.
retribution, the comedy of retribution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I thought the book, I read it, there's a whole other section of the book that I cut out. I just saw it as this guy struggling to keep his head above water. That appealed. I'm not sure whether Phil was the first person I thought of, but in pretty short order that came to mind, and then he read it, and it took me a while to write the script, and it's all Pete's Dexter stuff. It's just sort of cherry picking.
Yeah.
And then once he signed on, everybody else wanted to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Jenkins and Turturro and Christina Hendricks. I was doing Mad Men at the time, so I gave her the script right there.
Yeah, they're all great. I mean, the performances are fabulous, and it's an ambitious first feature film.
Boy.
I mean, I think of Blood Simple, which was the Coen brothers, but very simple piece, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. This was too many people and too many locations for the money.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did it again, this time around. I think the next time I need to do a two-character piece in one house.
Yeah.
It's very stressful.
There's stunts. There's vehicles.
There's vehicles. Luckily, my friend Lance Accord, who's a great cinematographer, who also shot Marie Antoinette and Lost in Translation and Where the Wild Things Are and some of the movie Her, Spike Jonze films, wanted to do it, and that his company, Park Pictures, was one of the producers, so he's like having another director, which is what he does. He directs commercials as well. So that was a big help. We found Yonkers, which is where we shot it. Yeah, and Yonkers looks like it's 1978. All those wires, and it had the elevation, and so which I liked. You could sort of get some depth of field, and trying to put it together. Shooting in New York City is very difficult. We thought we'd have to do a piece here and a piece there, but if you try to pack up a whole company in the middle of the day and move it from Brooklyn to Queens, you spend your whole day in the car.
Yeah, no, and if it actually takes an hour and a half to navigate, that's 4 or 5 hours in movie time.
Yeah, because break down and then move and then set up a whole company takes all day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think it's the most sympathetic character I've ever seen Phillip Seymour Hoffman play.
Really?
I think. I mean, maybe there is another one, but he's really so vulnerable, very delicate performance in so many ways.
Yeah.
You really feel for him. I mean, your sympathy for his character is what, carries you through the whole thing.
That's good.
I mean, what was it like to work with, and this was his last performance?
It was his last performance. We went to Sundance, we sold it. And then he passed away a week later. Yeah. It was, we weren't best of friends before we worked. I did a movie, I'm only in a couple scenes, Charlie Wilson's War, with Phil, who's great in it, and Mike Nichols directed it, and it's a very, very funny scene where he breaks my window with a wrench after we yell and scream at each other, and it was a lot of fun. And that's kind of how we had first worked together, and we lived in the same neighborhood, and as I said, I gave him the script. I don't think his agent ever gave it to him. This is the story that I recall, that his agent didn't want him to do it because it was too small, and he was too busy. So she didn't give it to him. And then when I re-bumped into him, as I said before, like he asked, how'd that movie turn out? I said, well, I never made it. I want to do it with you. He got the script, he read it, and he fired his agent.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he found a hole in his schedule, and he made the film.
Yeah.
It was not long after he did Death of a Salesman, which you said you saw.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
On Broadway, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting in a dark comedy, I mean, because he plays the comedy sort of deadpan.
Yeah.
And to be able to still, keep the muscle in the comedy. I mean, John Turturro is great, and Richard Jenkins, what a schlemiel. I mean, geez.
So good. He's so funny. He's the best.
Yeah.
To answer your question, to working with Phil is like, he knew what he wanted to do. He was pretty sure of that, but every take is different. He goes very deep, as you can see. That bathtub scene, he showed up, he took his bathrobe off, we sat down, and he just started weeping. We did 3 takes of that, and he said, okay, good. And he got up, and I ran out of the house as he was going back to his car to be driven home, and I started crying.
Yeah.
Basically trying to tell him, I don't know anybody that can do that. I don't think, I've watched a lot of movies, and I've been in my fair share, and that kind of emotional availability, as well, simultaneously knowing just where the camera is, and stopping in the middle of something and go, let me do that again, because I think I'm out of my light, or whatever, and he'd turn around. It wasn't a vanity thing, it was just a ability to simultaneously kind of be at different levels. And I was telling Jay, after we had, Phil's company, Cooper, I think Cooper Smith, or I forget what the name of the company, that's his credit up first. So we produced it together, and he came into the edit, this is months later, and he said, I think there's another shot in this bar sequence. I think when he finds out his wife has been unfaithful to him, and then he goes home and he sits on the couch and we play that song. But just before that, he goes, I think there's another shot that goes better in this sequence. And I said, no, we dug through everything. And he goes, no, there's one take. It was a busted take, which is a take that you don't get through, and someone calls cut halfway through the scene. And he goes, there's another piece. It's a little bigger and it's a little off angle. Sure enough, we dug through all the footage, and again, this is months and months later, and there was a shot that we didn't get all the way through, and so it doesn't get marked on the production report. And there was the shot, and it was just at the right angle, and it was just the right size, and we cut it right in, and that's what's in the movie. So like he has that kind of memory, as well.
No, a consummate actor, really. I mean, and you say the kind of actor, 3 takes, 3 entirely different, performances, 3 entirely different qualities of performance. I mean, just it's the dream for a director. And ferocious. I mean, like in that movie we were acting in, I kept jumping his line, and we were yelling and screaming. We rehearsed the thing, and Mike Nichols had said we were on a stage, and he said, okay, look, it was an office scene. He comes in and he's yelling. He wants to be the station chief in Helsinki, and he goes off in this big speech about I speak Finnish, which will come in very handy here in Virginia, and I want to know why, and I jump in on him, and I kept doing it,
And in the middle of the thing, he's like, I have another fucking line. And I was like, God damn it, I'm sorry, because we were just screaming, and we went back and just kept doing it. And he was just like, that's the way he was. He was attacking this thing, and he's the same way. I mean, you need to have a reason why you want to do something different. You need to have a reason for everything.
Yeah, absolutely, and very fertile imagination. Absolutely. Now, your first directing experiences, yes, were at Mad Men.
Right.
Did 5 episodes of Mad Men.
Right.
And so I guess, I mean, I'm curious about that, but also what was different about taking on a feature film, where, I mean, obviously in Mad Men, you're familiar with the whole world of that production.
Yeah.
This is much more ambitious in a sense because you're on your own and you're out there with your own team. And so what was different about it, and what do you think you really took away from it?
Well, yeah, as you said, you know the crew, you know the production, you know I had to ask to trail a director, which is what you do in television, and I don't know about features, but you follow the director around, and you kind of get the hang of the process of a episodic television schedule. So I did that a few times before officially asking if they would let me have an episode. This is the 3rd or 4th season of the thing, and they did, and then I did that one, and then they liked it enough to let me continue to do it. So I would do 2 a season. That was all you could do schedule-wise, because it takes a month to do 1 episode from start to finish. So I did a few of those, and then I did a few of another television show, Judd Apatow show. But before, I did 2 seasons of directing Mad Men, and then I did this, and the difference is you're on your own. I mean, in Mad Men, there's a structure, there's money. Lionsgate produced it. AMC aired it. Obviously, the big companies with deep pockets, or relatively, it was cable television. But so I mean, if you don't get the shot, you can come back tomorrow because you own the set, you own all the cast, the clothes, the whole thing. Yeah. This thing. If you don't get that, when Richard gets dragged out of the bar, if you don't get that, and then it is literally turning blue. Right. We shot all night. It's and Phil and I got into an argument. Yeah. And he's trying to get Richard out of the street before they kill him. Yeah. And there was a thing they were doing, and I wasn't seeing it. And Phil and I got into an argument in like 4:45 in the morning with 200 people standing around, and the producers were saying they were drawing straws to see who was going to go in and break it up because we had to finish. So the terror, as you know, of we can't come back here. We moved everybody out of the neighborhood that lived there so that we could shoot there. Sure. And they all wanted to come home. And so it's very, very stressful to do a movie of that size with that many people. Yeah. On that short money for the first time with those actors. Yeah. You have to know, you have to be prepared. And you don't want them to turn against you, for sure. No. That was the fun part. I mean, having done it from the other side, that was the least fearful thing of mine. Yeah. It was the scheduling and wrangling, and the producing part of it is tricky. I mean, getting everybody in the same place on the same day is murder. Yeah. And like you say, when you're shooting a location, I mean, every day is a huge, monumental challenge. And if you don't make your day, it messes things up. And you really can't come back unless you've got more money and more time. Because literally, production costs whatever, $50,000, $60,000 a day, just in the basic raw stuff. Everybody's schedule. If you even wanted to come add a day of production for some of the actors, they can't do it. Phil was in the middle of shooting the Hunger Games, which they have all the money in the world, and I'm trying to work work their schedule out with them, and it's people always think about you don't want to lose your light in the course of a day, but when you shoot all night, which is grueling, you can lose your night. You can lose what we were doing. Yeah, because it started to get light. And then they can change it a little bit in the post. They can sort of darken things up, but it looks different, and and a short day is 12 hours. Like that's the you hope to get everything done in 12 hours. Every day is at least 12 hours. And that's a long day. Yeah, sure. And then the next day, it's 12 hours again. Yeah. And so it really requires stamina too. Yeah. And you were involved in the producing, so you were also attuned to the money issues. I was. I didn't raise the money, but I wrote the script and I hired the department heads and the editor, Tom McCardle, also did Spotlight, and that's where is that where I met him? It's not where I met him because Tom McCarthy was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine,
Sure.
and he had introduced me to him. So I'm bad with chronology, but he cut it, and so I hired everybody, obviously the actors.
Yeah.
And again, once you get Phil Hoffman, it's everyone immediately. Phil,
Sure.
I think Richard Jenkins took like an hour and 20 minutes to read the script, and called me back and said, "I'm in."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think for an actor who's a director, also there's that trust and collegiality, and you get their language, they get your language. I mean, I think there's a real plus there. Just curious, then we can open up to a couple questions. But in Mad Men, when you direct an episode, you say it takes a month. So do they give you a script that you can work the script, or is the script fixed?
Script is fixed.
Yeah, so that's not flexible. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I mean, very, very strict to the word. If you don't get that word, the instead of somebody will tap you on the shoulder who wrote it, supposedly. Matt Weiner wrote all the scripts.
Right.
But there would be other people, shared credit with people. Being in it, there was a certain advantage to that because I would say, look, we're not going back. That's the best. We're never going to get a better performance than that. And by the time I edit this, he will have forgotten that it was the instead of because he's so busy, doing it all at once. I forget what.
Well, just the question of how much, as a director, I mean, obviously you have a lot more creative flexibility in making a feature film. When you're doing Mad Men, you have to, the script is the Bible, and also the characters to a certain extent, I mean, are certainly in their groove. There's not a whole lot, I mean, there are so many dramatic incidents in Mad Men that you can have fun with, for sure. But the characters are the characters, and they know their characters, and they live with their characters, and you lived with your own, because you also acted in episodes that you directed.
I did, yeah. You have to hire in television, they don't have playback, because it's too time-consuming. Because you have, if you shoot a scene, the director is usually in the other room at the monitor, watching, there's a producer or two, there's the script supervisor, and they're all doing their jobs while watching a couple of monitors. There's usually 2 cameras in television. There's close and a wide. So you're going back and forth, kind of editing in your head, going, that's where we'll be. I mean, you read the script so many times. By the time you actually go to shoot it, you've scouted the locations, you've rehearsed the actors, you've talked to the costumer, you've gone through all the departments, all the meetings. So by the time you actually shoot this thing, the story starts to work itself out, and you're like, that's where we'll go in on him, or whatever it is.
Sure.
But the script was bedrock. I mean, and I being in the show, they knew they had me sewn up. So other directors would come in from other shows, and they'd say, you're going to do the 6th show because so-and-so can't be here. Oh, you know what? So-and-so's, kid's got something. You're going to do the 9th script. And I would just do the one they gave me.
Sure.
And the first one they gave me was one called Signal 30, which was another writer on the show said he was supposed to do rewrites on it, and he said I put it down on the table and said, I'm not touching that script. It's perfect. And I lucked into a great script, the first one.
That was one of the first Jared Harris scripts, wasn't it?
He had been around for a little while, but that was one where he gets in a fist fight with Pete Campbell, and it's such a funny. And Pete Campbell has to go back to high school to go to driver's ed because his driver's license expires, and he falls in love with he's having a midlife crisis, and he falls in love with a high school girl. And it's really just a brilliant piece of writing.
It's a good.
So I really lucked out.
Yeah, that's great. And so, but doing Mad Men, an episode, you give the DP, you work out the shot list, and you're in charge of the visual treatment of the material.
You are. Well, I mean, to an extent, they never moved the camera in Mad Men. It was always a camera on sticks or a dolly. There was never a handheld camera. I used the first steady cam on Mad Men. It was the scene where Draper takes, I don't know, some kind of drugs or goes to a party and smokes hash or something, and then he hallucinates himself running to the pool and seeing himself drowning in the pool. and I pitched, we should use a Steadicam. We should change the whole look of this sequence.
Sure.
And they went for it. But mostly it was cameras on a dolly. You know, you could roll with somebody if they were walking down the hallway or whatever. But he did not like a lot of camera movement. Matt wanted, you know, whoever was speaking, he wanted on camera.
Yeah,
because he wanted to hear his writing.
Yeah, well,
see it and
worked.
hear it.
It was great writing.
Yeah, it was great writing. Yeah.
And so, but then you would be in charge of the edit also. You would be in the editing room?
You had to cut it 5 minutes long.
Uh-huh.
You had to cut the episode 5 minutes long. We were getting fights, and you know, he'd say, I fixed it, and I would say, fixed it? You ruined it.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know. And he'd say, do you know how hard it is to cut an episode to time 44 minutes? And I'd say, yes, I do. Which is why I shot it the way I shot it, and now you've cut, you know.
Yeah, cool.
That's the trouble about television directing is you work yourself crazy. I'm a very prepared. I go in and I have a lot of work done, homework done, and then you have to hand it over, and someone recuts it a little bit.
Yeah.
Very little of Mad Men got cut out because we shot. It was
very tight. Yeah.
Very tight. They very rarely dropped scenes, so it was. You know, you were treated very well. I mean, I have no complaints about my treatment over there. But it's difficult to hand it off and then have someone else put in music that you would, you know, in this game,
sure.
it's
all yours.
Yeah, for better or worse, it's your decision.
And so in Mad Men, the music would be brought in by somebody. Well, I know David Carbonaro